Good footwork is key, but it raises an important question. When do I use which technique and why? That's a question I have been asked quite a few times, and I'd like to share my thoughts with you. To answer this properly, we need to dive a bit deeper into fencing theory, and also take the tactical side of the sport into account. As I explained in the previous videos, footwork consists of three key elements: the lunge, the passing step, and the flèche. These are the main tools we use to quickly close the distance and reach our opponent. But to understand when to use each technique, we first need to consider three essential questions. First, which target areas are currently open? Second, is there a threat from my opponent? And the last question, where am I on the fencing ground? These questions can help guide our choices in the heat of the moment. Since most decisions during a bout happen subconsciously and instinctively rather through active thinking, I try to keep these things as simple as possible. You use the lunge when you're already in striking distance. That means you are already able to hit your opponent even without taking another step. Therefore, the lunge is only used to compensate your opponent's retreat. Let's have a look on some examples. This one shows you why the position on the field is important. As you can see here, my opponent is at the end of the field. That means for him, when he wants to escape, he can't run back anymore. Therefore, his only option is to defend my attack. And when you remember what I said is that we also have to look at the target zones. In this situation, he had his hands quite pulled back to his torso, so the only two options for me is a thrust to the torso or a strike to the leg. There is also no immediate threat from the blade of my opponent. So the best option for me is to attack the target zone he can't defend. Because the only way he can defend this target zone is by running out of the field, what means a point for me. And I'm already close enough, so I don't need any passing step or flèche. A lunge is enough to perform the attack. This is a more usual example for the lunge. But let me tell you why this is a good situation to perform a lunge. In this situation we're in the middle of the field, but I'm already close enough to hit the hands of my opponent. If I would perform the lunge, I would also be able to hit the legs. That means my target zone are the hands and the legs. But in this situation, my opponent gives me a decent threat with his sword. So there is a high chance that he dodges the attack and go for my head. What in the best case for me would cause a double hit. So in this situation, it would be safe to stay in distance and go for the hands. So in the worst case, I could stop my attack and go for parry post instead. The passing step always makes sense when the opponent is still out of reach. That means I can either use it for a direct attack to quickly close the distance, or use it to perform an approach. An action that doesn't aim to score a hit in the first tempo, but rather sets up the situation to hit in the second tempo. This example shows what I mean by that. In this situation, my opponent is quite far away. So therefore, I firstly need to come in distance. So there are two options in my mind. The first would be to perform basic fencing steps to come in reach and then perform a lunge. But in this situation, my opponent has his guard quite low and he also extending his hands. So by attacking the torso or the head, I force my opponent to move his hands in a quite large motion. So the idea of this situation is that I'm making a feint or a thrust feint, coming closer, and when he's parrying my first strike, I'm now in the perfect distance to hit the open target zone. Let's move on to the flèche, which carries the most risk but also offers the greatest reward. The flèche is only effective when my opponent is already in reach, but still has the possibility to quickly escape the range. If the flèche is used too early or in situations where it's not longer necessary, the chances of action backfiring are very high. I already did an example of when to use the flèche in one of my short content videos, so therefore I will bring another example. So here you can see that I'm already at the end of the field, what gives my opponent plenty of room to escape when I wanted to counterattack. But What really is the key factor in this situation is the motion he is doing. After he performed the lunge, he is pulling back, not only with his sword, but also with his body. So the direction of the movement is quite obvious. Plus, he has plenty of room to escape. So the best thing here is to follow his movement and lean into a full committed tag. So my opponent now has to focus on two things: getting away from me and also defending my incoming thrust. And there you have it. I hope I was able to give you a deeper understanding of when to use which technique, and I will leave you with some examples of when footwork actually goes wrong.